Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we've got actually a legal advisor, a lawyer here. No, we're not in trouble. But I think we've got some exciting topics today, specifically regarding marriages and taking that big step of tying the knot. We've got Albert here. Welcome, Albert.
Thank you, JP. Pleasure to be here.
Tell the listeners a bit regarding your history. What do you specialize actually in? Because there's lawyers that actually specialize in each division of law, property, marriages, etc.
Thanks, JP. Appreciate it. Nice to be here. So I'm Albert de Lange. I'm an attorney and conveyancer. I practice primarily in property law, but obviously, as you know, property law, we've got a lot of influences on marriages as well, and the marriage structures are very important for us as well. I further do a bit of commercial work, which is the drafting of commercial contracts, and then sometimes put my finger in the pie when there's a bit of property litigation as well.
Interesting. Let's dive right into it. Marriages, contracts in South Africa. What different contracts do you get, and how do they actually work? Just like in a brief nutshell.
Yeah. So JP, in South Africa, we primarily have only three contracts that you look at, or three marital regimes rather. The first one, which is known the most, and is a bit of an old school one, is the marriage in community of property. Plain and simple, marriage in community of property consists that the two spouses, everything that they have, debts or assets prior to their marriage and during the marriage, that forms part of a joint estate. So you will note, most likely our parents and our grandparents, for their time, they would have been married in community of property. The other two you get, and then you need a notary, or a notarial lawyer, a notary public, is to draw up an antenuptial agreement. And there's two marriages where you need an antenuptial agreement. One is the marriage out of community of property without the accrual, and out of community of property with the accrual. So just to, in a nutshell, recap that, out of community of property without the accrual, it means that you still enter into a notarial contract, an antenuptial agreement that's registered in the deeds office, but all the assets and debts of yourself and your spouse remain separate.
Yeah.
So it never gets intertwined with one another. And the other one is a well-known one nowadays, which a lot of professionals, young people tend to get married to, is a marital regime out of community of property with the accrual. And with the accrual, it means that you have a starting value when you tie the knot, and then you actually build a joint estate during the subsistence of the marriage. So during that time period that you guys are married, you will build a joint estate, and on death or divorce, it tends to be separated off 50-50.
Good. So I think the in community of property, especially regarding parents wise, was more an emotional decision.
Yeah.
It was driven from their folks, and it's what's been actually seen as, if you're not in community of property, it's bound to be a divorce later on.
Yeah, so and I think it was a very romantic thing ages ago, but nowadays, in community of property has its risks. Obviously, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a businessman, and if there's assets, or even if you get in a personal legal battle.
Yeah.
If you're married in community of property, then your spouse is going to be dragged into that legal battle, and it will influence her as well. So the thing with in community of property is the protection.
Yeah, it could be messy. So just a key factor difference between in community, out community. I think you mentioned it slightly. What is the key driver between if you need to choose in community or out community of property?
The decision between the two will obviously always be up to the spouses, but the main difference between the two is, and that's where we get back to debts and assets, is would you like one joint estate where both spouses, which is now in community of property, one joint estate for the rest of your lives, and your partner, your wife, your husband is at risk for any of your debts or any of your assets, where out of community of property, you have that freedom, you have that financial freedom actually to make decisions. And I think that's a big thing that distinct the one from the other. When you're married out of community of property, you have that financial freedom to go and buy a property on your out without needing the consent of your spouse. But when you are married in community of property, all financial decisions has to be made together. And if you just think about property law, which is more of my department and area of the law, if I was married in community of property, I would need my wife to sign the agreement of sale with me. She would need to sign all the transfer documents with me. And when we bond a property, then she'll need to sign the bond documents as well.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
So let's take it back a step. If we go into the marriage and we actually get married, we went to a lawyer and we actually didn't sign a contract. What happens then?
If you get married, you did not sign a contract with a lawyer, you're already married. If you've got a small marriage certificate from the Department of Home Affairs. Then we go to the default position. In accordance with South African laws, you go to the default position, which is married in community of property. And the only way to change that is to go and apply to the High Court to change the marital property regime. So if you did not know the knowledge, you were not aware, especially young people getting married, if you weren't aware how the things work, then you will default to marriage in community of property. Later you realize, yes, but this isn't what we planned. And then you need to approach the High Court, and the High Court will need to give an order for you to change your marital property regime. And if they give you that order, then you're able to register a post-nuptial contract at the deeds office, which will then regulate the marital regime.
In time-wise, how long does that normally take?
It could take a while. I can't give you a specific timeline at the moment, but it could take a while. But the other thing that you need to think of is financial expenses. To go through the High Court to get that order, you will need to appoint an attorney, attorney who works in the High Court, and that attorney will need to appoint an advocate. So we're talking about a lot of unnecessary legal fees.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when we go into the marriage and unfortunately the things didn't work out, divorce, what impact does your marriage contract have on the divorce side?
Okay, valid question. So we have to remember that there's always two things with regards to these marriages, and that's divorce or death. But let's cover divorce. So if you're married in community of property and you divorce, it's going to be a rather easy exercise for the High Court or for the Magistrates Court or the District Court, whereby all the assets and debts will be split 50-50. When you're married without the accrual, they will married out of community of property without the accrual. They will obviously, your assets remains your assets, depending on if there's another order regarding maintenance or maintenance towards your partner or maintenance towards your kids. That could be another thing. When it gets to your marriage out of community of property with the accrual, they will look at your starting values and they will look at your end values during the relationship, and they will see who had the biggest increase. And then the spouse with the lesser increase, will then have a claim against the ex-spouse, if I can call it that, for a part of his increase or the difference between the two.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, structuring is key and depends on what you do as a work and where you're going forward, what your goals. That will determine which side of the marriage contracts you're going to.
100%. Just to add on that, JP, we see it in practice sometimes where people are married in community of property. The husband or the wife starts a company. They've got a company registered, a PTY limited company. And before you see it, the one spouse gives all the effort and all the hard yards over the years to build a company. But when it comes to the divorce, then the other spouse is like, okay, but I want a share of this. We're married in community of property. What's yours is mine and what mine is yours.
Yeah, in the ideal world.
In the ideal world.
So let's take a step towards your expertise and property.
Yes.
If we're going to get that decision and we happily, as a couple, we want to buy a house, a property, what implications does that have beforehand, before we get married and after we get married? Is there big differences, and what do we need to take into note for that exercise going forward?
Very important question when it comes to property law, and I've had experience with this as well, is where people live together for a while. Sometimes it's a few years, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 20 years, and they buy a property together, but they're never married. At the end of the day, my advice up front, if you're not married and you're buying a property with your girlfriend or your partner or your future wife, maybe enter into an agreement which regulates that relationship. prior to buying the property or simultaneously with buying the property, because that agreement will then regulate if the partnership, not the partnership in a business sense, but if the relationship rather gets terminated, or if you part ways, then that agreement will regulate how the other partner could be bought out, or if the relationship terminates, are we going to sell the property in totality and settle the bonds? Because when you're not married, there's a lot of risk, because most young buyers will need assistance from banks and financial institutions to obtain a bond. And sometimes as two people, you can afford a property and you buy that property before being married. And then at the end of the day, things doesn't work out. And all of a sudden, one partner needs to take over the bond, but they can't necessarily take over that bond.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing to regulate it. We can even go further that if you live together for a long while, then parties can be regarded as if they are married.
Correct.
And then the one partner could have a claim against the other partner. So I think the best advice, if you're not married and you're buying a property with your partner, with your girlfriend, with your fiance, make sure that there's some legal structure within it in terms of an agreement, because that agreement will help to regulate everything.
And that agreement, is it a physical contract, or can they just put out a paper and say, from this date going forward, we like to structure it as accordingly?
Yeah, I would recommend to be a physical contract drafted by an attorney and a property lawyer who has some expertise, because that agreement will confirm who attends to the payment of the bonds, who pays the levies to the HOA and the body corporates, who pays the rates figures to the municipality, how is it going to devolve when the relationship ends. Where are we going to litigate if it's required to litigate? Or are we going to litigate? Are we going to go for mediation? Are we going to arbitrate it? Or are we going to litigate in the magistrate's court to get the property divided between the two partners?
Yeah, I think it's obviously from your side, you've seen it quite often.
Yeah.
And the expertise is actually being shown just to ask the right questions, because there's multiple scenarios being played off, and 100%. You need to take that into factor when drafting that contract. Lastly, I want to ask, what is your advice to any young professionals, entrepreneurs, in regards to balancing love and the legal aspect between the two? It's a tough question, and it might sound wrong, but it's something we need to think about.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
My advice, there's different levels to my advice. One is on a personal level and one will be more on a legal level. But if you combine the two at the end of the day, it is an exciting phase when you get engaged. It is an exciting phase to plan the marriage, but you also have to plan for death or divorce. It's not unromantic to go and to do an antenuptial contract. It's actually future spouses making a big commitment to one another and saying, listen, I am planning a life with you. I want to make sure that all our structures are in place, and I want to make sure that we are taken care of if one dies or if we get divorced. So my advice to couples, to entrepreneurs, to young business people, obviously with entrepreneurs and businessmen and businesswomen, check where's your business going? Because at the end of the day, you want to protect your business first of all, and you want to protect your spouse. And that's two separate things.
Yeah.
When it gets to the romantic side of things, go have that deep conversations. Talk about your assets with your partner. Talk about your liabilities. Talk about family wealth. Because it's also important to sometimes in an antenuptial contract to declare that any inheritance will not form part of any joint estate if you're married out of community with the group, for example. We know that in wills of your parents or family members, or where you are a beneficiary of a trust, it's sometimes structured that your future spouse can't receive any benefit from that will or from that estate or from that trust. But we can even go further, and we can go outline that within an antenuptial agreement to say that any inheritance from parents or certain family members or benefits from a trust shall be excluded. It's a big conversation, but it's not a scary conversation. Me from a legal perspective, having that conversation with my partner is exciting. And it's some place where you form trust and where you know that, listen, we are taking the right steps. We are thinking about our future, and we're not just walking blindly into a marriage. And I think that's vital for every person getting married nowadays.
Yeah, it's a big decision getting married, and to have that conversation and be actually open about it and putting everything on the table, that can make a big decision if we're going forward or not.
100%.
So it's quite important to have these discussions, and that's not even getting into drafting a will, for example.
100%.
And how's that going to happen? So yeah, I think it's a good topic. We're going to stop there at this stage. I'm definitely going to have you again for another session, and we might go a bit more in the property side. Thank you for
pleasure.
joining us, and have a lovely day.
Thank you, JP. Appreciate it.
Perfect.